The original Insta360 One R introduced a modular design that was interesting in concept, but difficult to work with. Can the updated RS make this camera worthwhile? Let's get this action camera on a selfie stick and take it for a run.
True love, this thing right here, so I'm gonna leave you. Can be with someone who doesn't care. You're running and running and running and running away from our problems. So here we stand on the edge tonight. There's no turning back now. I've been weak for 3 damn weeks.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? My name is Kofuzi, and I'm a dude who runs it a lot. Occasionally, I'll get in the water and swim or hop on a bike and go for a ride. But primarily, what I do is every single day when I go for a run or a ride or whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm bringing an action camera with me and filming some footage. So for me, action cameras are my life. That's something that I always work with every day. And I'm very excited to talk to you guys today about the Insta360 One RS. But before I give you my thoughts on how this camera stacks up, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a camera that Insta360 has sent me for the purpose of review, so I didn't have to pay for it, but no one is paying me to make this video or to use the camera, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Insta360 One RS. First, let's go over some specs for this device. The Insta360 One RS is a modular camera, so it kind of looks like a GoPro and has GoPro mounts at the bottom and has a GoPro kind of looking case. In essence, once you take it out of the case, it's a bunch of building blocks put together and you can kind of build the camera of your dreams. So we've got a 4K boost lens, which is the main update in the One RS. You've got the RS module, which is kind of the brains of the operation. And on the bottom, you've got the red part, which is the battery. Now you separate all these things apart and you can mix and match. You can flip around this screen so you could have it facing kind of the opposite side of the lens, or if you're using it more in vlog mode, you could have it facing you. So when you're looking at it, you're seeing yourself as you're filming. The other module that they have is the 360 module, and the 360 module comes with like this little rubber cover to protect the 2 lenses that are in here. But you can add the 360 module to it, which has lenses on each side, and you add that to the RS module, and you put that together, and then you've got your 360 camera that you can shoot with. So you can kind of mix and match whether you want to shoot in 360 or you want to shoot something that's a little bit more traditionally like action camera style. That's something that you can do, and you slap it all together, and then here you got the camera and you can put it back into the case. The camera itself is waterproof up to 16 feet, which I feel like is pretty impressive because of the fact that it is modular and there's so many areas that water can get in. The fact that they're able to maintain that waterproofness, to me, is pretty impressive. Now let's talk about some of the more individual parts of these. First, let's break this thing apart and talk about the battery. The battery is slightly different than last year's battery. It's a little bit bigger. It's a 1445 milliamp hour battery. Now, if we look at the RS module itself, kind of the brains of the operation, the main upgrade to this, as far as I can tell, is some of the interface features in terms of what's going on this screen, as well as an additional mic to hopefully improve some of that audio quality. Now, in terms of the features that are improved on the back, there is a instant zoom function. So no matter what mode you're shooting in, you can always kind of zoom in and zoom out on your subject, which I find really important and useful whenever you're shooting vlog type footage. When it's a selfie, I kind of want it spread out as far as I can without it getting too fisheye. But if I'm turning the camera around and showing everyone what's going on in the world around me, I do want to be able to kind of cut in a little bit, because otherwise everything just seems far away and it's kind of hard to show everyone what I want them to see. So I really like that feature. There's a ton of different shooting options on this. There's like HDR video mode, regular video mode, slow motion video mode, like a million different time-lapse options, a million different photo options. It's a little bit overwhelming to me. I feel like there's too many of them. They need to cut it down a little bit. But the nice thing is there is a button up here that you can press where you can customize a couple of settings that you use most frequently. So that way those things are just really easy to reach and you're not kind of shuffling through menus endlessly as you're trying to get your next quick shot. The other thing that I found it to be a really great improvement is that there's 50% faster Wi-Fi transmission. So the way that I typically use a lot of this footage, whether I'm using the 360 module or the 4K boost module, is I'll shoot a lot of footage, whether it's on a run or a cycling activity or if I'm out just vlogging. And I might want to incorporate it into a bigger YouTube video later, but relatively quickly, I do want to get something up into my Instagram reels, on a Twitter, or into TikTok. And so I frequently use the Insta360 app to be able to download the footage, edit it real quick, and then put it up for that quick social media post. Now let's talk about the 4K boost lens. This is probably the element that has the most improvements to it. Now the 4K boost lens is a 1/2 inch sensor with a f2.4 aperture. That 4K footage can shoot up to 60 frames per second. If you want to get to 120 frames per second, you got to switch modes to the slow motion shooting modes, and then it can capture 1080 footage at 120 frames per second. If you want to get crazy with your resolution, you can shoot up to 6K with this 4K boost module. I'm guessing that's what the boost is. You can boost it up to 6K, but you're limited to a 2.35:1 aspect ratio, which is the kind of thing that you'll see on like super widescreen videos when people are trying to make their video footage look extra cinematic. It's an awkward resolution that I don't typically use, but if that's something that you're looking at and you want to get a lot of resolution out of an action camera, this is kind of the answer to your prayers. Next, let's talk about the 360 module. Now, if you wanted to shoot 360, you just put this module onto the RS and then get the battery on there and then slide this entire thing into the case and you're ready to go. As far as I could tell, there are no updates to the 360 module, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that the glass and the hardware in that 360 module are the same as the glass and hardware that are in my favorite 360 camera, the Insta360 One X2. All right, now, so with that out of the way, let's talk about kind of like the good, the bad, and the annoying of this Insta360 One RS. And then after I talk about those things, I'm gonna go into like a buying guide, who should get it, depending on whether you have a 360 camera already, whether you have a GoPro Hero 10 already, or any kind of permutations of that. I'll go over a bunch of stuff in the buying guide. If you want to fast forward, there's chapters along the bottom that you can go ahead and do that. And before I get into the good, the bad, and the annoying, I do want to go over kind of like the cameras that I am currently using in my rotation. So as far as action camera goes, there's two cameras that I love using and that I use on a regular basis. The first is the GoPro Hero 10. I feel like it is the best GoPro that GoPro has ever made, and I absolutely love it. I don't have to really worry about it at all. It's very dependable. As far as 360 footage goes, I don't like the GoPro 360 camera. I don't like the GoPro Hero Max. I don't like the GoPro 360. There's lots of problems with the GoPro's approach with 360. Instead, my favorite 360 camera is the Insta360 One X2. So those are like the two cameras that I'm pretty much always using. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's how I'm going to be looking at the Insta360 One RS. First, let's go over the good. The things that I think are good are this 360 module. I think that Insta360 has really nailed 360 camera footage in terms of usability, workflow, and kind of image quality in a spectrum as it relates to high frame rates. I love slow motion, so I love to be able to have high frame rates, and the Insta360 module can shoot up to 3K of a 360 image up to 100 frames per second, which I can generally slow down to 1/4 speed slow motion, and that's something that I use quite a bit in my kind of regular like repertoire of video footage. The 1080 footage at 120 frames per second in this boost lens, I think, is also really, really good. One of the things that you'll need to make sure that you do because of the kind of the focal lengths of that 4K boost lens though, is you want to make sure that you're using this Insta360 selfie stick. Now, this is one of two different selfie sticks that Insta360 makes. One is kind of a twist lock one. You untwist it, extend it, and then you could twist it to tighten it at whatever length you want. This one is just pulled by tension, and it's like about a 1/2 inch longer. It's not that much longer, but it's longer than the other one. You just pull it out or compress it back down. And you're gonna want this because it's much longer than the kind of other extendable selfie sticks that are out there on the market. And you really need it because of how like tight in the Insta360 4K boost lens cuts in. Now you can have it kind of get fisheye and kind of go even wider than that. But for me, for action footage of product, especially like shoes, I want to make sure that I'm not going fisheye and distorting what the product looks like. So I do really like the selfie stick that are in here, and combining that with the 4K boost lens at the 1080 at 120 frames per second, I think that it's a really good combo and something that I feel confident making YouTube videos with. I did the On Cloud Monster review using that setup with 1080 at 120 frames per second to make that product review video. I also used this 4K boost lens for making a mix of 4K footage and 1080 at 120 frames per second footage in 2 different vlogs that I put together. So the first 2 days that I was in Washington, DC, like last week for the Cherry Blossom 10 miler, those were shot completely on the Insta360 One RS, whether I was using the 4K boost lens or whether I was using this 360 module. Now, there's some stuff that was bad about working with the Insta360 One RS. And for me, the biggest bad is the fact that the 4K only goes up to 60 frames per second. The GoPro Hero 10 has 4K at 120 frames per second available. And so I've gotten very used to that. I can then just use one video setting, whether I'm shooting product footage, I'm shooting action footage, or if I'm vlogging. I just have one setting that I use for all my stuff, and that's all I ever need to really worry about. I don't have to tinker with anything, which is very useful for solo creators, people that are doing run and gun shooting. You're just not spending time tinkering, and you're gonna be less likely to miss a shot. And then also you don't accidentally leave a camera in one setting when you go to a different kind of shooting situation, which is kind of what happens to me most of the time if I'm tinkering a lot with settings. The Insta360 One RS 4K boost module only goes up to 60 frames per second. So that for me was really limiting when I was shooting vlog footage in DC. I feel like when it comes to shooting conditions where light changes quite a bit, like going from very, very light sky down to like shooting people or myself, I feel like it takes a lot of time for the camera to adjust. And even when it did, I felt like the dynamic range wasn't quite as good. The last thing that I want to talk about in terms of things that I think are bad about this camera is that it's really heavy and it's really big. So let's put it together again, and I'll put in the module and the battery, and these 3 things together are about the same size as the GoPro Hero 10. They might be about the same weight, but there's no mounting bracket on this, so I can't really use this on a selfie stick like this. I have to put it inside the case. Now the case does have a nice feature to it. It's a lot easier to open and get the camera in and out than the original version. And I don't know if you could see it in here, but there is a little piece of foam in there that is designed to sit right on top of the new microphone hole in the RS module and block some of the wind. So it should help in terms of making the audio more usable from your footage. Now, when you put this in and all together though, this becomes a very big camera and a very heavy camera compared to the GoPro Hero 10. So I feel like this is just getting a lot bigger. For me, the battery on the R was never a limiting factor for me. So a bigger battery doesn't move the ball for me in the way that I shoot at all. I would rather make it a battery and a GoPro mount, or make it a smaller or same size battery so I can use the same one for my other Insta360 One R camera, and make the whole package a little bit smaller. That's what I would have preferred, because it's getting heavy, and especially on the end of this very long selfie stick, this camera will start to bend and bow this selfie stick a lot. So I feel like they really need to start thinking about how heavy this thing is getting, because it's too heavy as it stands. All right. So that's the bad about this camera. Let's talk about the things that are just annoying, things that I could probably live with, or I will live with and get around, but stuff that I'm just not happy about at this point. So as far as the thing that I find the most annoying is that while they have improved the workflow a little bit, if you're shooting like 4K 60 footage, you can use it straight out of the camera and it's just fine. But if you're shooting slow motion footage, 1080 at 120 frames per second, which is like 90% of the videos I'll shoot with the 4K boost lens, you've got to run it through the Insta360 Studio app first. And the annoying thing is, the only thing that I want to do with it is apply the stabilization and that's it. But there's no way to kind of really batch do that. You got to go through, open up each file in the app, change it to make sure it gets rendered out at 1x speed, otherwise you'll lose your audio. And then apply the flow state stabilization and then export. It's a pretty fast export, I'll give it that, but it's a really annoying process that you can't batch do like that. So that becomes super annoying for me. It's just another step. I think I understand from an engineering perspective why they've kind of offloaded that from being in camera to out of camera process, but it's just super annoying. The next thing that I find annoying is that there's only one screen on this RS module. And even on this side, there's no way to make it so that way you could have two screens. Now, there's lots of devices that have two screens. The GoPro has two screens. The latest DJI Action cam has two screens on it. You can get it with one screen, and that's the one that I have, but you can get it with two screens on it. And I just think that's a little bit easier to use for a camera like this, where I'm gonna be using it in selfie mode a lot, but also showing people what's going on around me a lot too. So I want to be able to kind of frame my shot a little bit better, especially since when this is in kind of like linear angle mode or like narrow shooting mode and not like fisheye, it cuts in a little bit tighter than I'm used to with the GoPro. Now, I'm sure I could learn to kind of like figure out how exactly to point it over time. So I put it in the annoying category that there's only one like screen on it. What does salvage it a little bit though is that like if you know you're going to be shooting it a lot in like selfie mode, you can rotate this thing around, and they made it so that you can do that. So that way you can have this screen facing you and it'll still fit inside the case as well. So I can put it in this way, and now I've got it set up in the case, and it's got the screen as well as the lens, so I can see myself, and I'm looking at myself now in this camera. So you can kind of do it that way, but then if I turn the camera around and I want to show you something, I can't see what the camera is seeing. And so like, again, it's something that's annoying for now, because I'm sure I'd over time figure it out. But for now, I'm kind of like missing a little bit in terms of my framing. So it's a little bit of an annoyance. Now, the last bad thing that I want to talk about has to do with the 360 as it's implemented in this GoPro style camera. Now, this selfie stick has a GoPro mount on it. It just screws onto the top. Otherwise, there's a 1/4 mount on here, and you just screw this in, and then you can put on either the GoPro style 4K boost lens or this 360 module. Now, the way that 360 cameras work is that they have two lenses, and each of these lenses captures more than, say, like 180 degrees here. So it captures more than this side of the camera, and this lens captures more than this side. And what it does is it stitches all that image together, and in the process, it can delete the selfie stick, which is an amazing little part of the trick and something that I love. Now, the problem with having it on a mount like this, which is very useful to adjust if you've got just one lens looking at you, but when you got these two lenses in the 360 configuration, the invisible selfie stick thing works the best when it's exactly straight. But this thing is very easy to accidentally have a little bit off center or a little bit skewed this way. And so the fact that there isn't like a notch where you can lock it into vertical position is really annoying for me that it does that, because then in some of the footage, you'll see part of the selfie stick, and it looks really jarring that most of the selfie stick is gone, except for like half this handle. So that's really something that I feel like is an easy mechanical fix. That's something that should be able to do here. And it's super annoying to me that they don't. Now, I know we've gone over a lot, so I'm going to summarize by going through my buying guide in terms of who should buy, which kind of bundles and options that might be available, and what alternatives you should probably also be considering if you're in the market for these kinds of cameras. Now, the edition that I got is the twin edition, where I got the 4K boost lens and the 360 module put together. Now, the price on that is $550, and you're essentially getting two cameras. You're getting an action camera plus a 360 camera. Now, that's not the way that I shoot. I still am going to be shooting with the GoPro Hero 10 for my action stuff, and the Insta360 One X2 for my 360 stuff, because I think those are the two best kind of unitaskers in each of those two categories of cameras. But if you don't have either of those, or you're looking to upgrade one or both of your categories of action camera and 360 camera, and you're looking to save a little bit of money, it is a great way to be able to get both cameras for a reduced price. Now, let's say you don't want to get into 360 at all and you only care about the action camera module, the 4K boost lens. I'm not sure that the Insta360 One RS is the thing that you should buy. It's a pretty good action camera. It's better than a lot of the other non-GoPro action cameras that are out there, in my opinion. But I think that at the price point, it's $300 is kind of like the bare bones, just the RS, the brains, the battery, and the action camera module. And right now, GoPro is really heavily discounting the Hero 10, trying to also sell people on the subscription. So you can get the GoPro Hero 10 for $350, which has that 4K at 120 frames per second. Similarly priced GoPros, as far as new stuff, I think the GoPro Hero 9 comes in at about $350. I think the GoPro Hero 8 is like under $300 these days. And I think at least spec sheet wise, it's very comparable to what the Insta360 One RS is doing. I feel like the RS is probably in between a GoPro Hero 8 and a GoPro Hero 9. So I feel like if you're going to be looking at like the best action camera you can buy and you're looking to spend in that $300 range, trying to find either like a refurbished GoPro Hero 9 or a new GoPro Hero 8 may be the way that I would recommend people to go, especially because you don't have the extra workflow step that the Insta360 One RS mandates that you undergo if you're going to be shooting anything in slow motion footage. The other thing to think about though, if you are interested in getting into Insta360 ecosystem, is for the same price as the 4K boost lens, if you're getting just the boost lens only, you can get the Insta360 Go 2, which loses the screen to look at and makes it a little bit harder to kind of mess with settings, but you're getting a much smaller, tiny form factor. And if it's your first action camera that you're gonna run with, that might be the right weight of camera that you're gonna want to run with until you kind of get used to it. But if you already have, say, a GoPro Hero 9 or a GoPro Hero 10, and if you already have, say, an older Insta360 camera, like the original One R, the X1 or the X2, I don't necessarily think that you need to go out and upgrade to the One RS Twin Edition. So hopefully some of that guidance makes sense and helps you to understand what the strengths and weaknesses of the Insta360 One RS are. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. I'll post a link to that channel in the description below. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?